Welcome to Ready, Set, Hunt. Whether you're an aspiring, new, or seasoned hunter, join us as we share our experiences and learn from other hunters around the country. That's all that comes to mind when I think about Before the Hunt is Top Gun theme song. I know we talked about it in the last episode, but
does
still
anybody
fresh.
else listening right now have like a pump up song? How do you psych yourself up, or do you psych yourself up? Do you amp yourself up?
I feel like you
It's
gotta have something.
Man, openers are exciting. I was
Mhm.
driving around a roundabout in Burnsville today, South Metro of Minneapolis suburbs, and 5 big toms just chilling
Mhm.
right on the roundabout, just looking around, pecking away, not
Yep.
scared at all, and
My
get out and
mind,
grab them. You could wring them by the neck.
my mind's fixed on bears right now. But speaking of pump up songs, another song that I really like to listen to, especially before duck opener. I don't remember the name of the artist, but he's a country artist, and I think he does like a lot of hunting related stuff. And the song is called "Dogs and Duck Calls." Oh, it's so. I think we've actually listened to it. Maybe you don't
We probably
remember it.
listen.
We've
I
listened to
think
it
we
once
tried.
before
We turned on a playlist or two of "Give Me a
when we're,
Hunting" playlist. You know.
when we're out duck hunting too. Yeah, it's just fun. But yeah, but yeah, I guess that's a good segue into today's episode. We're going to be talking about lessons for beginners, and specifically today, I think we're going to talk about before the hunt. Um, I think we're going to split this into kind of like a 3-segment little mini series, kind of like we had the series with the 4 W's. Now we're going to have a mini series called Lessons for Beginners. We're going to have before the hunt, on the hunt, and then after the hunt, each of which is equally important for different reasons. But
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. If you're listening
mhm.
today, my name is Chris Roush. I'm 50% of this equation here uh, for Ready Set Hunt, and it's my good buddy Peter. And we've a little backstory if you haven't been listening and you're just jumping on. We've been hunting for a good while, a little bit of different backgrounds, but we came together. Pete's very much more practical, technical research side, and I'm more fly by the seat of my pants. And
Have fun
it's a
doing
good,
it.
balance.
Yeah, we balance each other out. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so we've talked about all the reasons to hunt and what we're gonna hunt, where we're gonna hunt, why we hunt, all those. But now we actually get to talk about the meat and potatoes of the thing that we've been talking about, the actual hunt. And so, Chris, when it comes to planning for a hunt, or when you think about approaching hunting season, what are some of the first things that you do? And if you were a beginner, if this was your first time hunting, or for your first season hunting, what would be your absolute first steps to start planning your hunt? And maybe talk about why it's important to have excellent preparation when it comes to getting ready for a hunting season.
Yeah. I mean, we touched on, the last couple episodes with the W's. So where, when, the why might not really come into play here, but it does. It's never gone.
I think it underscores a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So when if it's been a long time since it's been my first hunt, but I can apply because you apply your methodology for preparing your hunt to all types of hunts, but your focus obviously changes from like a gear standpoint or the tool you're using. So if your bow or your rifle, shotgun, whatever it may be. Overall, I do like, my gear drop
Mm-hmm.
pretty much. I go through, especially when a season's starting up. So whether it's turkey or duck or pheasant or whatever, antelope, the way I do it is I open up everything, all my storage bins, everything. And I have it kind of like my clothes, gear, warmth type bins. And then I got my technical gear, trinkets. I got my miscellaneous bins. I got stuff I haven't used in a long time.
Hmm.
That starts to happen. You just realize I'm never really utilizing this. And then you got your, at least I do, uh, type of hunt bins. So I got kind of my duckish, duck bin, waterfowl bin. Then I got my deer, and it might be more blaze orange oriented or, you know, something like that. But, and then I got my Western stuff.
Hmm.
So up in the mountains. And, it's basics like, okay, I'm thinking of temperature right away, what kind of hunting season it's going to be, because that predicates my whole thought process of what I'm going to need and what I'm going to haul out. Or it's nicer when it's a little bit warmer at times from hauling stuff out. You're not so bulky, but at the same time, you probably want it cooler when you're hunting. It's
Yeah.
just better for meat overall. And then
Question.
I think about, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say a quick question for you. Have you found more of your Western gear making its way into your other hunting areas?
Oh, yeah. I mean, everything I wear now is Western flair.
Yeah.
Primarily because I think it's a practicality and a durability
I
standpoint. I
think a
just,
lot of the gear we wear out west is very versatile, and
yeah.
I love using it so much. It's like I just want to try and incorporate it into every type of hunting that I do. For
Yeah, and
me,
the gear that I run, it's been, once you have a couple of years under your belt and you have some pieces of gear that you've gone through, you're probably living in a space that fits better. You like the fit, you like the feel, the material. It breathes a certain way
hmm
to your body temperature. Like I wear my base layers even in the winter a lot of times, just at home or going to work, or I'll wear it under my jeans. I'm a thin guy, so I like being warm, and it's transcended even the hunting space. So
yeah,
like I wear my jackets at times, or I'll throw a beanie on or something like that. But yeah, the short answer is yes. And then, like, do you think about the next logical thing? I'll ask you. I'll flip it back to you. Do you think location then right away? Like, it's gear and location pretty much, like animals in there, but then
hmm
you have to think about where we're going. So if it's like water, or whether it's knee high or waders, or whether it's field hunting or mountain hunting.
yeah. Everything. I mean, everything really is interconnected. There's the wear aspect. I think another area I really check out. I mean, because we could go so many different directions with this. We could really dive into hunting out west, which isn't necessarily the focus. It's just something that we've gotten more and more into the past few years. But when I think about a beginner, where's one of the first places you should stop, or one of the first things that you should do, is once you've decided what you're hunting or what things you're hunting, maybe you're going to try multiple different types of hunts in your first year. The first thing I would do is I would jump into my regulations book and I would learn.
Yeah, I was gonna flip back to that once you started
Yeah,
talking. I'm like, you got to get your tags. If
yeah.
you don't have your tags, then I guess you're not
You
hunting.
gotta you gotta know what your tags are. You gotta know what they're good for, because just because you have a tag for a deer doesn't mean that tag is necessarily good for a doe or a buck. You have to. It
Mm-hmm.
all depends on where you live and where you're hunting. So I guess the where is part of it. But more than anything, know your regulations and know what that tag or that license allows you to do, because every state's going to be different. Even within the state, there's going to be different rules for different regions and for different units in the state. That's going to allow you to say, is one part of the state might have a higher bag limit of deer, meaning saying maybe you can shoot 3 deer, whereas a different part of the state, maybe their population's not doing as well, so they can only shoot 1 deer there, and it has to be a buck. So there's all sorts of things that you can learn in your regulations. Um, and regulations, usually the big things don't change a whole lot year to year. It's usually little things that will change here and there. But I will still pick up even in my home state, I will still pick up a regulations brochure and read it front cover to back cover every year, just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. Because I would hate to like go out in the field and be on this hunt and break a law that recently changed or a regulation that recently changed, and get get pulled over by a conservation officer and get in trouble for it, because I like to think I'm a pretty ethical hunter. I do things by the book. I try and abide by the law of the land, and but it's very easy for those little new rules that can sneak in, and you might not even notice it. So learn your regulations. I think that's really important, and also learn about your tag and what your tag allows you to do in the area that you're hunting.
Yeah, I mean, running off that, you're also like if you're in a spike zone for elk,
Maybe explain what that
or
means.
yeah, I mean the different setups for when a male elk is aging, just like a deer or
Yeah,
antelope, like you're going to get
it
different.
pertains to deer too, spike deer.
The
Um,
antlers are going to be different sizes, and
yeah,
then they have,
it's a
you know,
classification of antler size, really.
how many points or how it curls, like for the bighorn sheep, and there's some stipulations around those. But I'm tapping on that specifically because that may change or will change actually how you probably hunt that mature gauge of an animal, right?
Hmm.
So the bigger ones typically hide better. That's
Yeah,
or they're the elders, right? They're the ones that have made it through a couple winters
yeah,
and
they don't get old by being dumb.
correct. Yeah. There's a lot of guys that go out there and probably try some tactics that are not going to produce great results, like the gentleman that took off his shirt and we talked about
Yeah.
came straight down the hill at that nice whitetail. But
Hmm.
yeah, so that's kind of where my thoughts go, and then um, probably just some logistic stuff. Like, how far is are you jumping in your truck and driving 30 minutes, or are you driving for 2.5 hours? Are you driving for 10 hours?
Right.
Um,
You gonna
and
camp
then,
somewhere? You're gonna stay in a hotel? Like, what are you gonna do? You have a buddy
yep.
you can stay with in that area?
Mhm.
That all play comes into play when you're preparing for your hunt. Um,
It's easy to do a day hunt, and
mhm.
you don't really give it a thought, right? You might throw some snacks or something in your pack, or like we do when we might hit the morning out on the water, do some duck hunting. We typically don't stay all day, although we have at certain times stayed really late. But we'll go get breakfast. We're
Yep.
it's kind of a tradition for some of the hunts we do in Minnesota with the family or extended family. So
Yeah, some of those hunts we were pretty hardcore about, but then the other hunts that were just kind of like, you feeling done? I'm feeling done. Let's go get breakfast. It's
yeah,
maybe,
those are like that. I think that's the why, right? Because some
Mhm.
of those hunts, the why is different,
Yeah,
and the why for like our waterfowl hunting is just to enjoy a good time, and
yeah.
it's not a huge investment because we've already invested over the years on the gear that we need, and then we kind of have our spots that
Hmm.
we know can produce pretty well. It doesn't always produce, but when it's good,
I
it's
feel like
fun.
we usually try and find about one new spot a year though, or we'll at least go check it out and see, just to kind of give ourselves some more options. Which
Hmm.
I guess is another good thing for preparation to talk about is really kind of scouting the areas that you're going to hunt, whether it's private land or public land. You can get out there and actually put eyes on it, so you're not going in completely blind the first time you're hunting it. I think there's definitely value in that, and I mean, and we've definitely hunted areas where we've never, sight unseen, will show up and start hunting it right away. You can, in a way, you can scout while you hunt too, but there's a lot of value in scouting. I don't know, Chris, if you agree with that statement, or how much
Well,
scouting.
shoot, if we weren't married and had all the time in the world, we'd probably take a week ahead of time and go scout all over the West, or even more than that. But
Man, if I weren't married and didn't have kids, I'd probably be bouncing from public piece to public piece in Minnesota, just literally laying eyes on every piece of public I could, just to be like, to cross it off my list or to add it to my list of somewhere I'd like to go. You know what I mean?
and just a disclaimer: this is not a advocation for not being married. Like
No.
we just oftentimes know the responsibilities in life, and you become, you know, it makes you a man when you get married and you have kids. You really learn the value of sacrifice and putting others before yourself. It's hard, but
Hmm.
it's worth it too. And
It's a change of perspective for sure.
yeah, so Yeah, with that also, I was tapping on the food aspect of it. So if you have that longer hunt or you are going in the backcountry, you're gonna be thinking about not just your gear, but the pack, other stuff that's going into your pack, the
Hmm.
tools and the other items, then food, and are you gonna be close to the truck? So there's all those logistics that goes into that. Is that it pretty much for from the get go? Because when I think of when we get in the field too, so elk was new this year for us, or we'll just say Montana and the locations were all new.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of learning that goes into there, and there was a lot of prep. We believe they're gonna, what elevation they're gonna be at, where they're gonna feed, where they're gonna bed, what times they're gonna be out, where we need to be. Is
Hmm.
there water? You're thinking about all those things. But then
Yep.
on the flip side, something that's really simple, like a dove hunt or a duck hunt, you and I might roll out, get there, and we're just observing. Like,
Hmm.
oh, the wind is coming this way, so we're gonna have to probably sit over here. Oh, that's not as good. Well, what if we did this? And we try to play the odds in our favor, but that doesn't take as much prep besides looking at the weather in the morning or the night
Yeah,
before.
different types of hunts are going to take way more prep, I think, just from experience. And there are certain hunts where you're able to wing it a little bit more and kind of just learn on the go. And those are really fun hunts sometimes because you can feel like you're really kind of getting into the flow pretty quick. Whereas some of these bigger hunts, if you're like traveling out of state or going out west or something, there's a little bit more of a learning curve. It can take a little longer to really find maybe that success you're looking for or kind of get a feel for the area you're in. But something you can do, which we talked about during the W's series, but something you could do is be looking at maps and e-scouting and kind of getting a lay of the land from kind of like an aerial image. That helps a lot, especially when you're going somewhere you've never been before. Just kind of almost having a picture of that map in your head when you get there. You can be like, okay, I saw this on a map, and now I'm kind of putting two and two together and figuring out, so this is what it looks like. And it kind of just almost a light bulb can go off a little bit. Um, eh,
Even when you have access to the e-scouting stuff and you're in that 3D mode on your desktop or your laptop and you're really looking at it, it gives you, I would only say it probably only really gives you 50%. And it's a good 50% insight to understand the topography, to understand, okay, this is all a burn area,
mhm.
or this is where the water's coming down, so they're probably going to be following this channel or whatever the conversation is you're having with yourself or with a buddy on that location. But once you step out there, it is just so vastly different the way your
Yeah,
eyes see it. And even if you're zooming in that 3D mode and you're getting really kind of the plane of the horizon. Wow, I really like
that was a
elongated that
was a
word,
interesting pronunciation.
horizon. Uh, that's really fun. It's super fun to e-scout,
Mhm.
and I love spinning the 360 degrees when I have like a glassing point. I'm like, I love this. This looks really good. It's going to take an extra mile or two to get to this spot, but there's been time and time again when we do that and we get into back there and we find that spot. And we're like, oh, that's the spot. There's a lot of timber on it.
Mhm.
That's actually not going to work out the way that we wanted it to. So those are some of the challenges you have
Yeah,
just as a beginner. That's why scouting is so vital. You can only do so much
from a computer.
well, you can only do so much if you're going to be a destination hunter.
Right.
If you are, chances are, if you're driving up north 2 hours or something, you're probably going to like a family farm or some access to friends that invited you on, or I would say that the real challenge is when you're driving like states away when
Mhm.
you've scouted, because that's where you're really probably hucking it into the back country for the most part, unless you're like living out of your a campsite or a hotel or something like that. But yeah, what are your additional thoughts on some of those experiences we've had where we've scouted, put a lot of points on the map, and then realize what makes one work and what doesn't based on what you thought versus seeing it.
Yeah, well, we usually mark as much water as we can, especially when we're going out west, just because certain regions of the west can be a lot more dry. So we'll mark water that we'll find on the map, whether it's like a little pond or a little creek or a spring or something like that. But I mean, in our experience, we found that there's a very good chance that that water that you marked when you actually get out there is completely dry. um, when we were in Wyoming hunting mule deer 2 years ago. We went to an area that we knew was fairly dry, but we had marked some water spots, and we'd marked some cattle stock tanks that were still on public land. And we figured, okay, if we camp here, then we'll be within a mile of this water, um, that should keep us hydrated for during our time there. But what we didn't realize, or at least was very I guess, deceptive on some of the topography maps, the topo maps, and some of the aerial imagery, was that the hike to get to some of these water tanks was actually treacherous, like extremely steep, rocky, just super treacherous. And then it didn't help that when we got there, it was like 85 degrees. And so just to go and get water, it ended up being a lot longer of a hike than we anticipated, a lot more difficult, and it was just hot. And so you have to take some of the things you find on a map with a grain of salt, because it may or may not be there, conditions depending. Um, Something else that I've learned from e-scouting and prepping for a lot of these different hunts is, even in 3D mode, or even in 2D mode, you can see vegetation, you can see trees, you can see bushes, whatever, but you don't necessarily know what those trees actually look like on that landscape, because that's one thing that you can't really see in even in 3D mode, is you can't see the height of those trees. You can see the height of the topography and the mountains and the actual ground, but what the map doesn't do is show you the actual tree height. So you can pick a really great spot, if you're trying to find a glassing point or something like that. You can be like, wow, that looks like a really great glassing point. And then you get there and you find out that the trees are 30 feet tall and it's just like a wall of green, and you're not able to see anything. We ran into that a lot this last year in Montana, just the sheer amount of timber and the size. We don't run into that as much in eastern Wyoming because it's mostly sagebrush country. Um, but even here in Minnesota, different timber stands, they might look one way on a map, but once you get there, maybe they're a lot bigger or even a lot smaller than you anticipated. So you can't always bank on your e-scouting to save you. A lot of the times you're just going to have to pivot and kind of use actual boots on the ground scouting to do a lot of the footwork for you, no pun intended. Um, Chris, do you agree with that? As in our experience, it's just that a lot of the time vegetation is just way different than what you expected.
Yeah, I think that just comes from the scouting, like the maps, the access to whatever is being pulled up is just old by a year or two, or vegetation grows quick, especially when it's untouched.
And
So
water
unless a
dries up quick.
yeah. So we've marked water before and there ain't no water. And then there's like water right in front of us that we didn't even realize. And
Yep.
so, but if you, let's jump over to, hey, if I'm brand new, I've never done this before. What do I need to do to even get a license? Like, how do I go about, I went out and I bought a shotgun. Now what do I do? Walk me through, like, what do I need to do to go out and actually buy like a duck license?
Yeah, I mean, I remember my first time when I was getting into hunting and figuring out what I had to do. I mean, the easiest thing to do if you don't know is you can always call your state, the state you're going to be hunting in, and ask them to kind of give you a step by step. But most of the time, you're going to need you're going to need to get your hunter safety, which we've talked about in previous episodes. So go get your hunter safety, do what you need to do. For if you're an adult, most of the time, most states, you can just do it online. It'll probably take you a couple hours or whatever to go through the curriculum and figure that out. But then, yeah, you can call your state game agency, or you can always go to like a local sporting goods store. Most of the time, the people there are fairly somewhat knowledgeable about what licenses you need. But at the end of the day, I would try not to rely on someone else, especially at like a store, necessarily to know exactly what you need. The best thing to do really would be to call your state game agency, talk to a conservation officer or a biologist or just someone who knows the license system so that you know exactly what license you need to hunt your tag. So I would just call them and be like, hey, I want to hunt ducks. What do I need? I'm a resident of my state. What do I need? And likely they'd say, you need a federal waterfowl stamp, you need a state waterfowl stamp, you need a small game license, and you need to do your hip survey. Um, which is a free thing, but it's just a little survey. And if you've never hunted before, you just say 0 to all of them because they're going to ask you how many ducks you shot, how many geese you shot, how many doves you shot, all this stuff. But yeah, that's kind of where I would start probably is figuring out what tags I need, and I'd probably just call my state just to figure out exactly what I need.
Yeah, and then for everyone who's listening, none of you would likely be able to get that license at the counter because you didn't go get your firearms training, which is what I was alluding to.
I touched on that. Were you not listening?
Oh, did you touch on
Yeah,
it?
I talked about
Oh,
that.
I was like listening keenly for it, but I must have bypassed it, so it's on me then. Yeah, that's super easy. A lot of them are going down like online courses now, and then I would recommend a field day. It's kind of invaluable, like to be out there with your
Mhm.
firearm. The first time when my dad was, handing over the shotgun, sitting in the stand, he's like, "All right, if the doe comes out, you can shoot it." I can't even remember. I was a little kid, so to see if I liked hunting, right? That's kind of there are some kids that just, I'm not into it,
Yeah,
or
not for
they're
everyone.
interested in other things. That's totally cool. But then once you are into it, if you have I was going to make a joke, a good father, and I'm saying I'm not one because your parents would go out and buy you lifelong Minnesota licenses for every single game that's available because we have that option here, and it's a really cool option. But now then you want to go and jump into your uh, firearm safety course. Specifically, I remember being out in my field day, and a field day is you just put some boots on, you wear blaze orange, you
And
bring
you
your
carry a gun safely. That you just basically demonstrate that you know how to carry a gun safely.
yep, it's
You
not loaded.
practice.
You're going to be walking with a group of people, and then you're going to go to different spots in their kind of course,
Mhm.
and they will ask you questions like, okay, here's the target. It might be skyline. If you remember what we talked about with skyline, another one, it's if you were standing on the roof like Santa during Christmas, you can see Santa's full body. And if that was an animal, you're not shooting that. Why? Because you have no idea what's behind it in the backdrop, and if that
It's one of the
projectile,
rules of guns or firearm safety.
you
Always
gotta know your target. You don't
and
you
what's
don't
beyond.
you
Yep.
don't shoot at something that's half visible in the weeds, and you think it's a pheasant or you think it's a deer or what. Like that's just a no no. People get hurt, people die. It's not often. Uh, thank the Lord that there's not reports every week of something like that happening, but at the same time, there kind of is.
Hmm.
It's people being careless, and you're exercising your right uh, and the privileges afforded to us by this wonderful country. And so, yeah, you got to be aware of your surroundings in the backdrop because you learn those skills that become muscle memory. You start to realize, especially in the heat of the moment, bird hunting is a prime example. People swinging left or right, they're trying to follow a bird getting up,
Yep.
and you got guys walking next to you or gals walking next to you. And
I think
if you're not hunting safely, I don't want to. I'm not hunting with you. Just so you
yeah.
know, like that's just how it is.
I think the majority of hunting accidents are actually from bird hunting, especially like yeah, upland hunting and waterfowl hunting, just because there's so many so the animals are moving so much and there's people moving and it's so I mean, we catch each other every once in a while. We'll say, "Hey, watch your muzzle," because it's very easy because you're in the heat of the moment and you're looking for game and you're waiting for a bird to possibly pop up in front of you or for a duck to fly in and sometimes it's easy to kind of lose sight of where your barrel is pointing and
You and Yeah, you and I are very diligent. Like we are.
mm-hmm.
There are very, very few times in the years that we've hunted together, and we've been together a lot, where I even recall muzzle control or reminding, because it is very much a reminding space, right? Because you
Yeah,
might be
yeah.
going under or around some brush, and obviously if you're clearing a fence, you hand your shotgun over, and
Hmm.
the guy clears the fence, then you hand it over, and you do those things safely. That's what you learn in your course
Yep.
on your field day. Um, but there's people that I've brought out, and it's no concept, and it's unfamiliar. So
Hmm.
you and I know when we set, we're going to walk this hillside. Hey, I got 12 o'clock and to the right. You got 12 o'clock and to the left, or maybe a little bit of crossover because it's way out front.
Right.
But
Yeah, we've really been intentional about establishing a culture of safety when we hunt.
mhm.
Just because it's super important. Like we're going out to have fun and everything, but we want to make sure at the end of the day that we're coming home to our wife and kids.
Mhm.
Like I can't think of anything worse than, you know, an accident happening and my wife and my wonderful kids having to live with that the rest of their life. It's
Yep.
a big deal. You're using deadly weapons or tools. They can be weapons, and so it's important to be really intentional about using them the right way.
It's not even just the tool that's in your hand either. It is the terrain. The
Hmm.
terrain is probably your largest well, I'll say it is easily the largest hazard because it could get you to trip, and that's where you lose your muzzle control.
Hmm.
Like that's how you're
Accidental
taught.
discharge happens that
Yeah,
way.
that's how
Yeah.
you're taught to walk in the field. You're thinking about how your feet are being placed. Are they sturdy? Like when we are walking, like we've been on some jagged cliffs, and we've been on some straight drop downs in the middle of the night, going through evergreens, and then it's like boom, there's a cliff, and it's, I don't know, 8 stories down. Like it's
Hmm.
So you and I are always looking out for each other, and we'll put a hand on uh, the backpack, like, hey, if you're gonna go around here, you're gonna go around, because there's some places where animals get into, and you might follow something in there, and heck, if it's public land or you have access and you're after something and creeping along, more power to you. Like go live an adventure, but you're not doing it where you're like throwing your rifle to the other side of a bank, and then you're making a jump, and if you don't hit it, you're going to get swept down in the rapids. Like, I don't think anyone thinks we're floating those ideas, but
Right. Hey,
yeah,
quick
you're walking some big mountains.
quick aside. This is kind of off topic, but somewhat on topic. Um, a couple episodes ago, we were talking about turkey hunting, and it's been bothering me. It's been in the back of my head thinking I need to say something to clarify and to um, kind of have a disclaimer about something we said on that episode. So the way we hunt turkeys is a little different, or we have historically hunted turkeys is a little different than
Unconventional would be the correct
unconventional.
term.
We do a lot of spot and stock. We will crawl to get closer. We'll do all this stuff. I need to disclaimer, we are hunting on private land where there is no one else hunting. We know that we are the only people hunting there. I would not recommend this style of hunting for turkeys on public land because when you're turkey hunting, there is no blaze orange requirement, so everyone's wearing camo, and some people they get a little a little shot crazy at movement. Um, I don't understand how people get shot turkey hunting or how people shoot each other, but it does happen.
I don't
And
understand how people get shot
I don't
any hunting.
I know I don't understand it. I really don't because why are you just shooting at something that moves? But regardless, I would not recommend that style of hunting turkeys on public land. We only do it because we're on private land. I had to include that disclaimer.
Look at you taking care of people and getting the guilt off
I
your
just well
or
I also just
anxiety
I
off your
also
chest.
just don't want someone to get hurt because they listen to how we hunt and it's completely taken out of context. Like our context is just different than a lot of people.
Yeah,
Especially for
and we're
for beginners. Like if you're a beginner, there's a good chance that public land might be your thing if you don't have access to private. So,
and again, we are speaking and sharing from our experience. We're not substantiating how something has to be or how
mhm.
you have to do it. You are a grown person. At least I hope you are, and you have a maturing mind to learn and grow, and that's why you're here, right? Ready Set Hunt is about a like putting together a community that can talk about how to start hunting and how to get involved and like
Hmm.
what are we doing. That's a lot of the YouTubers, and they're reviewing, items and gear and lots of things out there. But we also do the turkey hunting the traditional way, and we scratch and we call and sit and throw our decoys out. And uh, for whatever reason, the I don't know, 150 to 200 and some turkeys that tend to live in our access area give you the finger, and they do not come to the decoys.
They'll
They'll
gobble
come
back.
during
And
they'll
they'll
come right
talk.
down during deer season. They'll come right rolling up right next to you during deer season, or they will be standing out in front of the house when you're driving up. But the moment we sit out in the woods and
I
we
don't know.
creep, we are like assassins. We are quiet. We are slow moving. We set up in advantageous spots. But these turkeys
They know a
like
thing or
get the
two.
morning newspaper and they're like, Peter and Chris, they're gonna they're gonna be here this
I
weekend.
don't know. And you know what? I'd like to think I'm a decent caller. Maybe I'm not a good caller. That could definitely be a part
You're
of it.
probably telling them, run away, run
Right.
away.
Right. They're like, I heard that sound last year. That doesn't sound quite right, but
I flipped on Monty Python, The Quest for Holy
oh
Grail
yeah.
yesterday when I was making lunch, and it bring out your dad, ding, but I'm not dead yet. And maybe that's how you're calling.
Maybe.
No,
Maybe.
we're not bad callers. They're truly it's the turkeys.
They're
They are
pressured
wise
birds.
guys.
We're not the only ones that hunt turkeys on that piece of private either. Um So I'd like to think they're also pretty pressured, and usually by the time we get out there, someone else has already taken a couple birds, so
Yeah.
they might be slightly educated, but
It's also the syndrome of like wild game not running away when like the big excavator is driving up and moving some rock like a rock pile, or the dump truck's going by. You know, we've seen deer just stand there and watch. We've also seen, when we get out of the car and then we're out there, then it's like everyone knows somehow. All
hmm
the deer are like, yep, Peter and Chris are out here. And I'm telling you guys, we do scent control. We play the wind. It is, but you're going into their environment again, and that's true for anyone listening to this. Uh, some people have it made on some private land.
yep.
Like, there are some really amazing parcels of land out there that just hold game, that the game love. It has good cover. It has good tree stand locations. It's got the egg in the right place, and people can build that. And if you've ever watched YouTube videos, they have those on there all the time where they'll like outfit the land. It's really fun to watch, at least for me and you, Peter. But
hmm I'd love to be able to
yeah,
really do that to an extent someday. We've done a little bit. We've built box blinds, we've put up stands. I've done a little bit of food plotting, not super successfully, I must say, but I also didn't put in quite a bit the amount of effort I probably should have to make that more successful. I'm hoping to maybe do a little bit of that this spring, uh,
what's awesome is
pending
like
having
the
time. But
the land that we have access to, um, and it's a blessing, is just a piece of an ecosystem there that the deer love. So they love the neighboring land like just as much for various reasons.
hmm
So um, we have a little kind of pact, or we at least communicate with the neighbors, and it goes spoken, not unspoken rules, but spoken rules.
right,
Hey, we want to see things grow up and have solid sized deer and have nice bucks walking around.
yeah,
Doesn't always work because obviously they travel. If you know anything, like if you don't know anything about bucks traveling, they travel, and they can travel for a long like miles upon miles upon miles. Um, but at the same time, if you're in a good spot, it can really hold those bucks, especially if they're the dominant ones with the does that are around, or the turkey flock. They might have the right tree set up. They might have the right grazing on some egg fields. They might feel uh, covered enough with the foliage that's around.
hmm
And other turkeys might not. They might roll
Roll right
just
through.
through. They might roll right through your land that you're hunting on, and that what you have access to doesn't hold them. But
Yeah.
you just got to know what you're doing, and kind of scouting is key. You can go out and sit if you want as a new hunter or as a season one in any place and see what comes in. But as the older I get, that doesn't seem like a great use of my time.
It
Like
all
I'm just gonna
depends on the
sit
hunting
here.
style. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, Switching gears a little bit, when we're talking about prep. I mean, I guess you could categorize this in prep, but Chris, would you agree? And I want you to touch on this and expand on this a little bit, but would you agree that one of the best things you can do as a new hunter is actually find a hunting partner or a hunting buddy?
100%. Not even a question.
Hmm.
I I I would
Can you
still
speak to
hunt
the
if it.
value of that a little bit?
Well, that goes back to the why, right? We touched on the beginning of this episode. You might have the different why. Like our easier hunts that are morning hunts, and then we get to come back home and we're home by like 1 o'clock or something of that. I'm just going to hang out with my buddies, and I
Hmm.
might take my daughter with me, and you might bring your little guy, and it's about making memories in that sense. And I love when ducks come in and set their wings. It's when duck hunting's good. I don't.
Hard to
It's
beat.
hard to beat good
Hmm.
duck hunting, but um,
Would you
I
say
don't think
that?
I'd want to do this by myself. To like, I would.
Hmm.
I don't think I'd want to. Like, I don't. I like talking about our stories, and I like laughing, and even the times where like this last elk hunt where we got pissy with each other. It's because you and I share such a love and a passion for this, and we know how to do this. So the fact that we rarely crap the bed, I think, got to both of us.
Hmm.
Um, and I think we're both equally as bummed. And I tend to be probably a little bit more dominant with my opinions. Um, so that just is one that a moment that got the better of me. But I doing it by myself. Like I don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere by myself.
Right.
I'll just say I admire like the Remy Warren or the guy that goes up into the mountains because I think that is something spiritual and carnal that I should probably do. I can do that in various forms with like walking through the woods that I have access to by myself or walking through a field. I can go out and do that. And you do that with like grouse
Hmm.
and some of that, but
I do some solo hunts. Yeah.
for me, I don't need to go, you know, 8 to 10 days in the mountains by myself for bighorn sheep. That doesn't appeal to me. I feel, for lack of better terms, safe with a bunch of buddies
Hmm.
because you don't know what you're going to get into, bears or big cats or different things like that.
Or
And
even if you take a spill and you're out there alone,
yeah,
there's definitely dangers of being by yourself.
yeah, it's there's no fear. It's more
Hmm.
so just like I know how to be smart, and I have a lot to lose, and my family has a lot to lose. What if I don't come home like we touched on? So I like sharing breakfast and grabbing coffee, and hunting is just not hunting. When you get, at least for guys, when we go out and we're driving for a couple hours or 16 hours to wherever we're going,
Right.
you start to talk about your heart and you start to touch on things that are stressing you out. You start to get perspective, and guys need that. You need that detox time. That's what hunting is. That's my why
Hmm.
for that's my why. So, what I mean, do you have a different thought on that or
Um, no, I mean, I definitely agree that hunting in general, at least for me, and again, it's different for everyone, touching on that why, but it is, I mean, it is very much social. Um, and I definitely don't think I would enjoy hunting as much if I didn't have someone to share it with. Absolutely. Um, but also, like for our listeners that are just getting into hunting or wanting to get into hunting, like when I first started hunting, I didn't really have anyone to do that with. I kind of learned things, I had to learn things on my own. But even if so say that you're wanting to hunt for the first time this season, and maybe you don't know anyone who is a avid hunter. Um, but maybe you know another guy who's interested in starting hunting. I think there's a lot more enjoyment in learning something like that together because you can both bring different things to the table. You might like Chris and I, we're very different people, but our differences, you know, our strengths complement each other really well. And so I think that finding a hunting partner can be invaluable because it can cut that learning curve, and it can just make it a more enjoyable process. And then you have someone to like when you have those successes, you have someone to share that with, and that's huge. And then even when you have those failures, you have someone to sound off of, to be a sounding board and be like, what did we do wrong, and like, or what can we do different next time. I think that's invaluable. So if you can find a hunting partner, even if it's someone who also is brand new to hunting, I think it's super valuable.
Yeah, I know that I was I'm like venting. I don't know if venting is the right term. Admitting. I was super ticked. I was so ticked. I was like even I had reception at that point. I was just texting my wife, I'm done. I can't stand being with the guys anymore. I just want to go home. That was frustration. Speaking of 10 days of giving everything to
Mm-hmm.
this and not uh to not gain the opportunity to possibly have success or manufacture the opportunity to have success is
Yeah.
really what got under my skin. But specifically on, our relationship, we've been really good buddies, like best friends, and hunting has been uh, that bonding space for us. And then life, we can talk about all other things of life. But we also go out with other guys when we're not together at times,
Mm-hmm.
and or might invite somebody and they're brand new, and that's okay too. Like you don't have to have like a go to all the time guy. It's super fun. Um, but when you're in the field with someone brand new as well, you learn a lot about them and the memories you make with like shooting some pheasants and you like knock a couple down and oh that's a nice one.
Mm-hmm.
You're already like friends.
Yeah,
That's
for
what
sure.
hunting does.
Yeah,
So
there's guys that you've introduced me to that we've been hunting with, um, and like the only experience I have with them is being in the car with them and hunting, and it's instantly a bond. And we may not like hang out all the time or even be like super close friends, but I know that I can text that guy anytime, and I can just pick up a conversation with him, and it's like because we've had those experiences together, and those are experiences that'll last forever. I can like actually say, yeah, he's one of my hunting buddies because I don't know him from anywhere else. He's just a hunting
yep,
buddy. But
yeah,
it's a different kind of experience and a different bond that you just don't get doing other things. I don't know.
yeah. So let's pivot a little bit forward here and go to like the preparation and planning. So we've talked about kind of the ready. I think
Mm-hmm.
covered a little bit of that. We talked about some ethical practices, regulations, licenses. Uh, what do I first think of? What do you first think of when you get ready for a hunt?
Yep.
So now we've got all that out of the way. Now it's like preparation and planning. So give me some. Well, maybe it's still the same, but just a different approach. But the importance of scouting and understanding terrain specifically, and then also familiarizing yourself with like local landmarks. We touched a little bit on it from looking at e-scouting to getting out there, but for setting realistic goals specifically on that, because we know we've set markers. Oh, this is 8 miles in, or I don't know if we've gone 10 miles.
I don't.
Like I
We
don't
haven't
know if
gotten
we've
we haven't gotten 10 miles deep. No.
yeah we haven't marked like from park
We
spot.
we haven't had to.
Yeah, we've got in and but talk to me about the I want realistic goals in that context. So like understanding terrain, landmarks, because your eyes and your interpretation of what you're seeing on the screen changes so much or can change so much once you're in the field. And then if you're like us, we like to drop pins and kind of go point A to point B, point C, point D, and we're following our roadmap probably up uh, gradual inclines, or we're trying to take an easy route and then how do we get to our objective. So talk to me a little bit about that stuff.
think this is going to pertain probably a little more to Western hunting, but it can to a certain extent in the Midwest and out east too. Just when it comes to like getting in deep to a piece of public or something like that. I think that people oftentimes, when they are looking at distance from an access point to maybe somewhere they want to go, you can use a measurement tool or something in e-scouting, or just figure out, okay, from my access point to the point that I want to get to, say it's 2 miles. 2 miles, that's doable. The reason that 2 miles sounds so doable, or that we convince ourselves that 2 miles is so doable, is that our brains just naturally think of walking 2 miles as if we're just going to go for a walk down the street, right? It's pretty easy to walk 2 miles in your neighborhood, or walk 2 miles in the city or suburbs or whatever. You're on flat ground, paved roads. There's very few obstructions, very few things in the way. But when you are out there, 2 miles, while as a crow flies, it might not be very far, you have to consider, okay, what kind of elevation am I going to gain? What kind of terrain am I going to be in? Am I going to have to scale rocks? Am I going to even be on a trail, or am I going to have to get off a trail to get to the point I want to go to? Am I going to be walking through thick brush, or, thick timber? Am I going to have to cross a stream? Am I going to have to cross, kind of parallel a marsh and be in some kind of nasty, nasty terrain, or mucky mud or something like that? There's all these things, all these intangibles that you don't necessarily think about when you're staring at a map. And it will kind of come to life when you get there, and you'll realize, wow, 2 miles as a crow flies isn't that far, but this 2 miles is going to feel more like 5, because of the effort, the physical effort that you're going to have to put in to get to that spot. So that's why I think it's really important to set realistic goals when you're looking at a map and trying to kind of coming up with a hunt plan, maybe where you want to go, and really try and, you know, look at this area under a microscope. And there's different tools within these different mapping, applications that you can use that will kind of help you with this. But just know that, in you can probably walk 2 miles in about 22, 23, 24 minutes, right? But out there, walking 2 miles might take you 2 hours. It might take you an hour to walk a mile. And so you have to kind of build all of these things into your hunt plan and know, I'm not just going to be able to get out there super fast, more than likely. It's going to take me a little bit of time. And not only that, but you also don't want to just be a trailblazer. Like, you want to be aware of your surroundings when you're going to these different spots, keeping an eye out for game. What if you don't have to go 2 miles? What if you plan to go out 2 miles and you run into something within the first quarter mile? That's great. We had an experience like that in Wyoming. We had this spot that we wanted to go to. We were dead set on getting there. It was 4 miles in. And on the way in, maybe a mile and a half, 2 miles in, we saw the biggest mule deer we would see all trip. And because we had this plan in our heads that we wanted to get to this one spot 4 miles deep, we just kept on going. And in hindsight, and overall, the trip was really successful. So, it all turned out great or whatever. But in hindsight, why are you walking past the giant mule deer that you see that's only 2 miles deep just to get to a spot that's 4 miles deep where you don't even necessarily know if there's going to be mule deer there? It was just,
Yeah, I mean, we got to that campsite too, and it was terribly placed. We made a terrible campsite location from a windage standpoint, because we took all the wind that was moving through that area, and I'm talking when it stormed, what was it, 50-mile-an-hour gusts
oh,
or 60, or
probably more than that. But
it
yeah,
snapped the tent. So
yeah. So I mean, part of that, yeah, setting realistic goals.
man,
Just
whoever was
really,
leading that trip, idiot.
just really try and think things through, and being realistic with yourself, and knowing that this is not going to be a cakewalk, and things rarely go according to plan. It's great to have a plan in your mind, but you also just need to be ready to be so
Here's
flexible.
here's what we learned from that story that Peter just shared. We hiked through some pretty sizable brush. We get to a stream, almost not quite a river, but we have no way of telling how deep it is, because from when we were e-scouting, it looked like we would have narrower areas to cross where you're just like kind of doing one of those easy jumps from some exposed rock to the other side and it's just flowing between you. Or maybe we get like a little bit of our boots wet or something.
Mm-hmm.
No, this thing is 15 feet wide,
Probably more,
maybe
maybe 20 feet
20 feet
wide,
wide. And
thigh deep in
you,
areas.
you could not tell. You literally could not tell how deep it was. And it looked deep.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we're like walking up and down it, we're spending a good how like 45 minutes just walking back and forth on this,
Trying to
and then we're
find
like, all
the
right,
trying to find the best spot to cross.
I don't remember who it was. Was you or somebody was just like, I'm gonna take my boots off
It was Drew.
and pants, and then I'm gonna get in here and see what we're dealing with, and much more shallow than we thought it was, but it was
But it was
still
muddy. It was super
yeah
muddy.
super muddy. We get across. And keep in mind, this is only the first half mile in. Like
Mm-hmm.
that river part is the water part was a half mile in. So we've spent a lot of time here. We have our mind set on going. I think it was 5 miles because there was some nice stuff that we really scouted and we thought would be fantastic. We huck up this hill another maybe half mile. It wasn't much from that water to up the hill was
Yeah, it was maybe another half mile to the base of the hill, and then a little bit of a hike up from there. Not too far though.
wasn't that far.
Yeah.
And we get to that hill and we come up the hill and their hill is a light term. They got rocky and large very quick.
Mm-hmm.
And like Peter said, I think you spotted them. I think
It was the next ridge. It was the next ridge system over, and the sun was setting, and there was about 5 mule deer bucks that were silhouetting themselves on the very top of this ridge. It was like very
again
majestic.
skylighting, doing the
Yeah.
Santa thing on the rooftop.
Yep. So you couldn't even really see the deer them. You couldn't see the detail of the deer themselves. You could just see their silhouettes, and you could just see this one giant rack.
And I
And
think
we,
I have one of the pictures on the website.
oh,
So
do
when
you?
people, yeah,
Okay.
I have that picture. It's distorted just a touch because
Yeah, they're
it's
pretty
looking
far
through the
away,
binos,
and it was dark. But
but that's yeah, we idiots idiots just take off the next morning to the left and just keep going. And
mm-hmm.
we don't even try to make a play of like, we should have divided and conquered. There were four of us. We should have just said, hey, so and so and so and so, you're heading up there and you roll. But again, we're learning a little bit of the ropes. We had my dad with us who is not a spring chicken, but
he did he
he's
did
got the
great. But
heart of gold and
mm-hmm.
determination to like he is going to stick it out. And I think to his detriment, he commits to that.
We're trying to be
But
cognizant and make sure we bring him home alive.
yeah, so yeah, that whole story, and I just touched back on that because we had our plan. It was a new experience. We've been to Wyoming. We've been out west before, but new area, and we determined in our mind, we already made up our mind that we needed to go to a place, which is probably the wrong thing always to think about. You're out there to be successful, like, and if a success is bringing home meat traditionally, like that is why you hunt. So when you have an opportunity to further stock in on something and play those cards and you just don't, well, you're going to get a life lesson there. So we learned a lot. We learned that we could have hiked in and just probably ran the couple of ridges that were along that water and hunted those for 4 or 5 days and easily been as successful, if not more successful, and not beat our bodies the way we did.
It was still a great experience.
I'm
like,
not shooting down the great
yep.
experience. I'm just saying what we learned and knowing we could go back to the spot we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
and we could play a whole different set of cards that are
Yep.
way less taxing on our body. And we could also keep a bunch of gear at the truck if need be, because we're only about a mile and a half in.
Right. Could pack lighter
max.
for sure.
Yeah.
And this is an important thing to note too for new hunters is if you find a place that you really like and you find a place that you're able to have success, there is nothing wrong with going back to that place multiple times and really getting to know that place at an intimate level. I mean, it's always fun to go new places and have new experiences. There's great value in that, and I super enjoy that. However, there is also a lot of value in getting to know a specific area or zone really well too, because the better you know an area, the more success that you're just going to continually have, because you know that area, you know the way the deer or whatever it is you're hunting use that area, you know their patterns, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of value in that too. So never cross a place off just because you've been there before or you've hunted there before and you're looking for a new experience. New experiences are great, but don't overlook the experiences you've already had, because no matter where you go, if you've been there before, it'll be a new experience because it's a new year, it's a new hunt.
The people that we know that take, if we're talking simply from a trophy standpoint, that take the largest game are not doing the hardest hunts. They're not doing the hardest plan to get there. There is aspects where they do that, but it is not a requirement to be successful to do the hardest plan that you can possibly do. Oftentimes I want to hike up into the mountains. I want to get to the white caps. Like I want the whole 9 yard experience. I'm a bit more realistic now after some painful hikes that I truly just I I knew I was getting back to the truck, but it felt like it was going to take me
Forever.
truly forever. Like
Mm-hmm.
I nearly cried when you're pushing yourself and I'm committed. Like my brain is like, nope, I'm just going to destroy my legs up this. And we split up not very far. We can't have been more than 200 yards apart when we were out in Montana on that first day or the second day coming back.
We decided to take different routes to the same location, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was rough.
I got into some pine trees and then I realized this is not the best way. This is not the best way at all.
Oh man. Well,
But yeah, talk to me. Did we miss anything here on so setting realistic goals, just be aware of your, what you're hunting, other local wildlife. If there is cattle or different things that are grazing out there, you need to be aware.
mm-hmm.
You need to know what a cow looks like. I'm sorry to say, if you're not going to it's not going to turn out well for you if you say, "Oh, I thought it was a bison and I'm hunting bison."
I'd
Just
hope
not.
if you're hunting bison, I hope you know what it looks like, because it takes a really long time to get that tag.
It's about knowing your target,
Yep.
and the worst thing you can do is just make landowners mad.
Mm-hmm.
They work really hard. They care about what they do. They want ethical things going on. They're traditionalists, and I back that 100%, affirm that 100%. Like they know and they live out there, especially on the west.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're all like in a duck pond and it's behind someone's house too, be cognizant. Don't shoot towards the stinking house.
Yep.
Like, don't be an idiot. Uh, think of women and children being inside, the house or a roadway. Like, again, hunter safety is, I think, a non-negotiable. You need to go do that field day.
Yep.
So
Let's jump
necessary
into
gear.
yeah, let's jump into gear. We haven't really talked a whole lot about gear because I think we're gonna have entire episodes, and for the foreseeable future, there will be many episodes talking about gear, because A, we really like gear. It's really fun. Um, B, it's a really important part of what we do. The gear you use is a very important tool. It can be overrated, but it is still important. And so yeah, let's talk a little bit about gear for beginners. What are some what's some of the necessary gear, Chris, that comes to mind if you're just kind of first starting getting into hunting, you're planning your first hunt. What are some of the staples that you think you would need? We can kind of bounce back and forth talking about the different ones that come to mind, but what's like one of the very first things that comes to mind for
Well,
you?
let's just, I'm going to educate here from a very beginning standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm going to do it from the way we have our gear set up and how we talk about it, how we think about it. And that is, you have three types of layers, maybe four if I'm going to talk about like your rain shell.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to have your base layer, which is
We're,
closest
and
to
we're
your
talking
skin.
we're talking about clothing here.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, clothing. You're going to have your base layers, which is closest to your skin on your skin. Then you're going to have your mids, which are your layers, right? So that could be straight to your outer shell. It might be a windbreaker if it's warm. You might only be wearing a base if it's really, really warm. Traditionally, hunting where we are and out west for the game that we're after is in cooler temperatures, if not cold, downright cold temperatures. So those base layers for me are for like my furnace layers or maybe a wick under that.
You're talking
But
about
then you're
first light base layers when you use those terms. That's their
well,
names.
well, First Light, if you do want to sponsor my loyalty, I am very loyal. Simply because I think it fits my lanky body pretty well, and I've been happy. But
Yep.
um, yeah, you want to hold heat, right? It's easy to shed a layer and get a little bit cool, but it is not easy to get warm,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're cold. Unless it's when it's really cold, you're gonna need a fire. That's just honest truth. Or you're gonna need some sort of sleeping bag. But even then, you got to have the right rated sleeping bag. But then you
And
got your outer shells.
PSA
So
on the PSA here, public service announcement on the base layers. For the love of God, do not wear cotton for your base layers. Don't wear cotton at all for hunting. Just
why?
get rid of
Why?
cotton.
I love wearing my Fruit of the Loom cotton undershirt and undies.
The reason you don't wear cotton is
I
because
said
when
undies.
undies, the reason you don't wear
Briefs,
cotton,
boxers. Don't wear boxers. Boxers will not do you
oh,
well.
that would be terrible.
That'd be so terrible. And don't go commando.
Yeah, that wouldn't be for me. The reason you don't wear cotton, cotton is a terrible insulator, which you want insulation.
What is insulation?
It's what keeps you warm. Uh,
It traps, lack of a better term, it helps trap air in
correct.
the
And
fabric
there's different
to
types of
create a
and there's
barrier.
different types of insulation, which we'll touch on, here shortly, and just kind of at a very basic level. But cotton also, when it gets wet, it does not dry very fast. So if you are, so let's say that you're hunting and it's cold outside, you're wearing a white cotton t-shirt as your base layer, your next to skin layer, then you're wearing a sweatshirt on top of that, and then you're wearing a jacket, and then you're moving a whole bunch. When you're moving and you've got those layers on, you're almost guaranteed to sweat. Once that cotton gets wet, it will not dry underneath that sweatshirt and that jacket. And because cotton is such a terrible insulator, not only will your shirt be wet, but when you stop moving around, it will get cold and you will be very uncomfortable. Do not
Hey,
wear cotton.
if you're into that sort of thing, more power to you.
Yeah, sure.
But you're gonna have terrible experiences over and over again, most
Yep.
likely.
We
So
like for our base layers, we like to wear merino wool. The reason for that is that merino wool is not only is it a good insulator, is it very good at keeping you warm, but it's actually a temperature regulator. So even when it's hot out, it can actually help regulate your temperature and keep you cool. And on top of that, merino wool, when it gets wet, is still very good at insulating. Also, merino wool dries pretty fast. And finally, merino wool is antibacterial, so it does not
I
get
like when you
stinky.
say also again. You should just say also every time. That was fun. I thought
Also,
you were gonna keep going.
also,
Also,
also, yeah, it's anti
if you get the
it's
first light base layers, it come in great colors.
yeah, it's antibacterial, and so yeah, it doesn't get stinky after you've been sweating in it for days.
Huge,
I can wear the same
huge.
shirt for 5, 6 days and be sweating in it every single day,
Yep.
and it does not smell like a stinky man. So,
Yep.
um,
So you got your base
yep,
layers there. So then you get into your mids, and that's just some extra insulation. You might throw. There's different sweatshirts. You might have uh, uh it's not a mid, but you might have a windbreaker type setup
sure.
that breaks the wind.
Or you might wear like a fleece sweatshirt or something, some guys will wear even like a somewhat thicker merino based zip up or a sweatshirt or something like that. Really just to insulate that insulate your body on top of the your base layer. And then
Yep.
talk about
And
the
then you
outer,
got and then
Chris.
And then you got your outers, and those are really going to be weather dependent. If you're going to need something like um, some of the gear that you can buy can act as an outer shell. It can also act as an insulation like mid shell, and then you can layer something else on top of it. There are times when I've had 4 layers on. I don't know if I've gone 5. I'm not being very technical in my brain right now. I'm just kind of throwing out what I got traditionally because you don't want to be bulky at the same time. So that's why knowing where you're going to go and what the weather's going to be like, I might bring, I'm always going to bring probably my base layers in some capacity. So something that gets the moisture away from my body if it's hot, as well as cold, but as a thicker base layer if it is cold. And then I might wear a puffy jacket or, just really dependent on the temperature. But I
Hmm.
do have, as you do, outer jackets that are much heavier insulated. And then when I say heavier, I'm not talking about like an orange cloud when you're deer hunting back in the day. Now it's, the things have gotten slimmer, but I do have an orange cloud jacket. That's not a brand or anything, but maybe I should make it a brand.
Orange
It,
Cloud.
uh,
I like it.
it is very large and clunky, but
Hmm.
it keeps you warm sitting in the deer stand. Um, but you layer for staying warm, and then when you sweat, you need to peel those layers off. That's a tip for beginners. If you're going to start to sweat and you're hiking somewhere, peel that layer off.
Yep.
You don't want moisture staying on in your gear, and then the moment you start getting a touch chilled, probably put a layer back on, obviously, and then you get into your rain layer. You might have a very light rain jacket, or maybe your outer shell does have some waterproofing
Yep.
set up. Did I miss anything besides maybe your different types of hats, which are self-explanatory,
Yeah.
different types of
I
gloves?
mean, some of this stuff is just basic. Like if you've ever been outside, just know how to dress. Um, there's a saying. There's a an old Norwegian saying, and you and I are both Norwegian, but there's an old Norwegian saying, "There's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing." And so, really, just be prepared for the weather you're going to be in. If you're going to an area that is maybe far from home, climate you're not used to, kind of look at the historic weather patterns and stuff for the time of year that you're going to be there, just to kind of know maybe what you can possibly expect, and just come prepared more than anything. Be prepared for where you're going and have options. You don't have to wear everything, but at least have things that will help you essentially um, tackle the weather and the climate that you're going to be in.
Yeah, that's a little bit of the logistics. Talking about like close to home proximity hunts, you can just kind of throw everything in your truck and you don't have to really think about packability,
Right.
especially when you're not bringing a bunch of different guys with you. Or maybe you do bring a bunch of guys, but close to home, you're not thinking so much of that. When we're going out west and you're thinking about your pack and what can fit in your pack, based on the weather and what you're bringing, food, gear, all that stuff, then you're getting into a space of I got to be very intentional.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also brought an extra like tote with gear for warmth's sake of like, okay, if it does turn really, really cold, I have my backup extra layer in here.
Yep, and we'll keep it
Um,
back at the truck. And so if
yep,
things get really hairy, we can always get back to the vehicle and kind of
yep.
get the necessary gear for the conditions. But you know, you can just kind of watch your weather app as closely as possible and see what might be coming. But sometimes things can change in an instant, and so sometimes you just
Yeah.
need
And
to be prepared for the worst.
if you guys have any questions on clothing, hit us up. We're more than happy to shoot our experience back and
Mm-hmm.
if recommendations and what's worked. And
Yep. And we
we
and we
we've
do use
tried.
a lot of First Light, but we have tried other things and do use
Yep.
other things as well. So
There's a reason that we are heavy on the First Light, and that's not voting like against maybe your preference for a certain brand that you really like.
hmm
We're very different body types, but we've found that we've gotten to the place of our gear because it's worked really well for us, and
hmm
we've tried different. You've been through series of boots, which we'll touch on here, footwear in a moment. We've tried different gear. We've switched out glass. You've been through different rifles, and in some circumstances, I bought a really crappy shotgun that I thought this could be the best investment ever, and it's going to work out, or just terrible, and it was terrible. So usually
Yeah.
when you say cry once, buy once, buy once, cry once, uh, it tends to be true.
In
But
most
there,
cases, yeah.
yeah, but there are instances where you might find a great product that doesn't break your bank, and it will easily do as well as something that's really
Yeah.
expensive.
And
So
at the end of the day, you can afford what you can afford. And so
Mhm.
don't ever let not being able to buy premium gear, premium clothing, whatever, don't ever let that get in the way of you just taking that step and hunting. If you have to go hunt in blue jeans, that's fine. You can do that. People have
as
done
long
that
as you
for
don't
a
freeze,
long time.
as long as you don't freeze,
Right. As
like you,
long as you don't freeze, be safe. But
you
like
could
you
probably
don't
find some long johns at Fleet Farm or something
right.
for $7
You
or
don't need the best of the best gear. You just find that
not by any
we just
means.
have found that over time we upgrade gear and it can make a big difference in a the comfortability of being able to do things and also the duration in which you're able to kind of stand up to the elements and be out in the field. Um, so that's I
And
mean,
keep in mind, you can only wear so much gear at one
mhm.
time. So I probably have, I don't know, 8 different hunting pairs of pants, give or take. Um, I
All for different
probably
purposes though.
all different purposes, but I've found there's probably three that there's one that is like my go-to,
Hmm.
and there's two. There's my second one is if it's cold, which is the version of the one that it's my go-to,
Yep.
and then if it's warm, I have one. But then and that's just from trying out and different gear. That's the buildup of time. So let's pivot a little bit to footwear because I think that's a good spot to connect on as well. I've I've gone through some different boots. We've been through some clunky boots. We've been through, lighter shoe element, sneaker type boots. We do have our go-to boots for Western hunting, which tend to be what we wear all the time, because they were great investments. But touch on me, touch on this, the boot conversation, because you really brought boots to the forefront of our hunting dynamic. Beforehand, it was very much an afterthought, and I just had a cheap pair, like $60 something that wasn't even suited for any of my hunts. They would overheat for sure. They're hot boots.
Hmm.
Um,
I mean, when I first started hunting, I wore like lacrosse rubber boots, knee-high rubber boots for almost everything. Um, and I quickly realized that if I walked any farther than a mile, my feet were not having it. And so as we started getting into Western hunting, um, the more and more I read and learned and watched videos, the more and more people were talking about the importance of like the comfort of your boots. And so, yeah, I've been through a few different pairs of boots, trying to find the one that works really right for my foot. And I really think that is the key there, is that not all boots are created equal. And that I don't even necessarily mean necessarily price wise in that, different boot companies design their boots differently. And without getting too technical into boots, um, different boot companies have something called a stay, which is essentially the design of the base of the boot and like the shape of the foot that it's going to fit. And not every boot company builds them the same. And so some boot companies really fit certain people's feet better, and other boots fit different people's feet better. Like Chris and I, we do not have the same feet. And so the boots that work well for him are not going to work well for me. And
that's true of any shoes, right?
Mhm.
Anyone listening to this has had multiple pairs of shoes in their life,
Yep.
and you probably have had your favorite pair of shoes.
Yep.
Why were they your favorite? Well, first of all, they have to be comfortable. If they weren't comfortable, they're not your favorite. And two, they probably were a style you liked, and it made you feel a certain way, and that's no different about your hunting boot. You can go out to REI or a trade post or a military depot for excess gear, and you can get a lot of different versions of footwear to put on your feet to get into the field. And not all boots, like you said, are created equal. So there's a quality standpoint, and then there's a purpose, and there's an industry here of boot making
Mm-hmm.
for a reason, because there are price points that really set different types of boots apart from a quality standpoint. Real leather, maybe they come from Italy. Maybe they are higher on your ankle, which I would recommend being very conscious of your ankles, specifically in rougher terrain. That is where I'm living right now with some crispy boots that have been nothing but fantastic. I did make a mistake, and I didn't know it because I went in and bought these nice boots. They're upwards of $400, and they were a half size too small. And
Yep.
I remember we went out and they were terrible. Like, what was weird is they weren't terrible when I tried them on and walked them and like broke them in, but once I got in the field, just that half size too small was destroying my feet.
Yeah, well, and
So I
that's
sold those and got a half size bigger, and they've been nothing but
yeah.
fantastic.
And I mean, there's a big difference between walking in your hiking boots or your hunting boots on like flat terrain, but then once you start having to scale hills, you're going to start feeling things in those boots that you never felt before, just because they're being used very differently. Um, I mean, when it comes to boots, you can spend anywhere from, like Chris said, maybe a cheap $60 pair, all the way up to almost $600 for a really, really nice pair of hunting boots that are made in Italy or
And they're
Germany or
not,
something like
and
that.
it's not like boots are weird. They're not like a status. It's not like Prada in
No,
my mind. Boots are very practical, especially in this space. And when you're spending that dollar amount on that item, because that's one of the more spendy dollar amounts for a single item, your boots, or can be, it it is functional and very specifically designed and put together from a quality standpoint. And when you put your waterproofing, lathering it up to make sure it's going to be weather resistant, you never know what you're going to get to do with snow. Um, there is a
yep,
clear difference between a cheap boot that you've not really thought about, or you just grabbed the boots out of the closet and gone. And again, that's fine if it works, and if it works, awesome. But oftentimes you have to have intentionality. That's part about getting into hunting. What is the purpose of this item? How does it work for me? If And you've said this because you've listened to some Remy Warren stuff regarding boots. Like, it's one of the items that'll take you out of a hunt day one. If
mm-hmm.
you got a blister in the back of your foot, I'm sorry guys, you're not hiking any miles. You're not hiking like anything.
Right.
And that, you get into like insoles, socks, feet wraps, or foot wraps, and then like gaiters. Like, talk to me about those four items
Yeah. So a
in
good,
conjunction with
yeah,
uh, boots, obviously.
a good fitting boot is invaluable and it cannot be replaced. If you have a poor fitting boot, all of those items that Chris just talked about are useless. The most important thing is that you find a boot that fits your foot, is comfortable. You've got room to wiggle your toes. That's important. You don't feel like your toes are crushed at the end of the boot. And you also want to make sure there's no slop on the back of your heel, because if there's slop on the back of your heel, you're going to get blisters. And really, the only way to know is to put those boots on. So if you find a screaming deal for an awesome pair of boots online, you know what? You can go ahead and order them. Just make sure they have good return policy, because you do not want to commit to those boots until you've tried them on and walked in them a little bit. And so I think it's invaluable that if you can go to a physical store and try on a bunch of different boots, and don't even try on a bunch of boots from the same brand or manufacturer. Try on different brands of boots, just so you can kind of see what brand tends to fit your foot better, because like I was talking about, different brands build their boots differently. So now, once you find a boot that fits your foot pretty well, there are certain items that will make that boot even better. Number one, you need to get aftermarket insoles. I'm not even a beat around the bush on this. the the insole that's in the bottom of your boot when you buy it is, some of them are little better than a piece of cardboard because they are boot builders. They are not insole builders, and insoles are also a very personal thing. Insoles are going to be very dependent. The type of insole that fits your foot is going to be very dependent based upon the height of your arch. Um, some people have really high arches, like myself. I have very high arches. Some people are flat-footed. Some people have a neutral arch. One of the best ways you can do this is, or to figure out what type of arch you have, is just think about in the past, if you've walked on a beach or if you've recently walked on a beach, look at your footprint in the sand. When you look in the sand, do you see like a full foot? Do you see like the pad of your foot and then you know, it's a little thinner in the middle and then you see your heel? Or if you've got really high arches, you might just see the pad of your foot and your toes and your heel and almost nothing in the middle where your arch is. That's high arches. That's what I have. I barely see much of my foot in the middle. Medium arch or neutral arch, you're going to see a little, you're going to see some in the middle. Flat footed, it's going to look like a bear paw. So you need to get insoles that are kind of designed for the arch of your foot. I personally run custom insoles that are molded to my foot, or they are designed based off a mold of my foot, just because I want to make sure I have the best support possible and want my feet to be comfortable after miles and miles and miles of hiking. Not necessary. There are ones that you can just buy off the shelf or over the counter or whatever, and they're not necessarily designed specifically or customized for your foot, but they're for your foot style. Um, Another thing to think about is socks. And I think when it comes to trying on a boot that you're going to want to buy or potentially buy, when you're trying on your boots, wear the type of socks that you're planning on wearing in the field. Chris and I, we wear darn tough merino wool socks. They're fairly thick, but because we typically like to wear slightly thicker socks when we're hunting. So when I try on a boot, or if I'm trying
That's
on a boot,
also because we don't run highly insulated boots as well.
correct. And we can,
So
dude, we
and
could
it
do a
offsets
whole we
like the
could do a
warmth.
whole
So
podcast on boots. I feel like we're going too deep here for this, um, but yeah, wear the socks that you're gonna wear when you're hunting, when you're
boots,
trying on boots.
just for context, because I can't leave that for all of you listening. There are different insulation levels in the boot that you're getting, and there are different materials for those insulation levels. Just like we talked about base layers, it's like the cotton and merino wool conversation. They will do different things to your feet. Sweaty feet act different. Cold feet act different. You just have to. Again, it's technical, but that's what we're touching on here because when we're running the socks that Peter's talking about, we've intentionally put those socks on our feet for this boot. So it might be a completely different setup for you in the same boot if you run, you know, warmer, or your foot construction and how it actually sits in the boot is different. That might be a thing. What insoles you have, how there's a lot of combinations here. And again, this is a little technical, but everything is a combination in your gear. As we're talking about all these layers, they do different things when they're combined. And when you have been in the field and you understand what they're actually doing to you as a person, as the hunter, you become better prepared, and it becomes very second nature to you. A half dozen hunts in, you know this is going to do this. I don't want to wear that ever again
Mm-hmm.
after 5 hunts,
Yep.
because and then you go out and you'll upgrade, or you look at different options, and this is how the research snowball starts rolling, which is where Peter actually thrives in our dynamic. But that is how you can don't feel like you have to go buy all this stuff right away.
No.
That is not, I don't want to advocate for that. I don't want you to go spend thousands and thousands of dollars. You can, and if you have it and you want to, you totally, more power to
Go
you.
for it.
But don't be the poser in the field, because every hunter who's serious and worth his trigger pull knows there's an account called Hunting Douche, and
On Instagram, it's great. If you don't follow them, go
it's
follow
so
them.
great. But it's the guys that walk into school and think they are the coolest person with daddy's money, and they're wearing like the designer stuff, and they jump out of the basketball court and they are pathetic and the dude with the 17-year-old sneakers that he laced up from his brother just jumps right over the top and dunks on him. It's really that space in the hunting world. So don't feel like you have to go out and get everything that you need right at the get go. Trial and error things. Like if you think you have a pair of boots that could work, that feel comfortable, that feel like they do support, because there are some non-negotiables that we would advocate for. If you feel like that boot fits some of the criteria of like supporting you, allowing you to go far, it's going to keep your foot dry, like try it, because you might have a brand of boot that I don't know about or Peter has never heard of, uh, that works even better than what
Yep.
we roll.
If
And
it
so
works for you, it doesn't matter what the name on it is. Doesn't matter how much it costs. If it works for you and it checks all your boxes of what you want, that's a great boot, and no one can tell you otherwise. Um, I'm going to touch on
it's got to stay together by the time you get home,
yeah,
and
that there is that. It needs
your
to
foot
be
probably shouldn't be broken. Or
it needs to be durable. I'll touch on foot care a little bit really quick. Something that we will do is that if we have areas that we know tend to get worn out quicker, like you can have a really great fitting boot, but if you've been hiking for 2 or 3 days, you can still get hot spots on your feet. They just happen. It's inevitable. Um, and so a lot of the times what we'll do is, because we've experienced these hot spots and we know where these problem areas typically crop up, what we'll do is we will pre-tape those areas using something we like to use, Luco tape, and it's essentially just kind of like an athletic tape, but it's a little more slippery, has a little bit more of a sheen on the outside, and essentially what that does is it eliminates the rubbing that causes these hot spots. There'll still be rubbing, but it's rubbing on the tape instead of on your skin, and so it helps prevent blisters. So we'll do that.
we are deep diving into some stuff right now, because I was
I
going to
know.
touch on also, like when you're we're doing a whole boot episode right now. When you are have every boot on your foot is actually going to make you walk differently as well.
Yeah.
Like like when you're touching on hot spots, my brain instantly clicked into, I know certain hunts where I walked differently because my boot was uncomfortable, and I was trying to make sure that I didn't get the hot spot where I knew it was going to form.
Mm-hmm.
That's also, you have to think about the terrain you're in, because you might be up and down more versus like flat terrain, and that's going to wear differently on your foot, as well as how much weight you're carrying. Like
We
there
will
is
we will do
there's
a
a lot
whole
here.
episode on boots and do a real deep dive. I feel like we've gone too deep here already.
Too deep.
But so let's get out of the deep. Let's get into the shallows a little bit here. Let's move on from
So
boot.
talk to me about safety equipment. Let's move on to, what items
Yeah,
do you defaultly just bring?
let's rapid fire through these more basic things. Um, if you're firearm hunting or you're doing a form of hunting that requires you to wear blaze orange, make sure you've got your orange, and the amount of orange that is required for the state you're hunting in. Some places you can get away with literally just an orange hat. Other places you have to wear an orange hat, an orange vest, and have a certain amount of orange to make sure that other hunters can see you. Other safety items would be like a first aid kit. If you're hunting out in the field, you should at least have a basic first aid kit, because accidents can happen. They do happen, and the severity or the in-depthness, I guess, of your first aid kit is largely going to be dependent on your hunt. We carried some pretty crazy first aid kits into Montana this year, just because we were going to be in bear country. You never know what's going to happen. We want to make sure we prepared, and also on top of that, know how to use the stuff in your first aid kit
Yeah,
if you're
one
carrying it.
thing that, and not even deep diving, but one thing that we will add now is probably, or is tourniquets.
Yep.
Um, and some of this might be like excessive from a higher level of like, oh, I don't need to bring a tourniquet or have a first aid kit. Well, if it's relative to your truck, you're not a mile away. Um, okay, I guess,
Yeah, if you're
but at
duck
the
hunting
same
and you're
time,
200 yards away from your truck, sure, it's
yeah,
still not a bad. It doesn't take up much space, and it's if someone gets shot, I hate to say it, but if someone gets shot, a tourniquet is an amazing thing to have. And even if you're close to your truck, if you're bleeding enough, it might be, I don't know, it could
Having
save your
having
life.
a everyone doesn't need to carry one, by the way. Because everyone's not going to be all injured, right? It's not a
Right.
war zone, and we're trying to triage here. But if someone does get injured, having that in there is important. But also, just make sure you have the proper headgear from like a light standpoint. If you're
Hmm.
going in morning, evening, walk out. Um,
Most hunts, you're going to be dealing with darkness at some point, so it's good to have a good headlamp that has good battery life that you're able to use to navigate and make sure you're staying safe.
yep.
And speaking of navigating, what navigation tools, Chris, would you
Well, no one
touch
uses
on?
compasses anymore, but you could you have your phone, which is going to have your maps, and that'll give you your
Hmm.
GPS locations. And if you want to bring like a satellite phone, we get into the backcountry. Cell phone reception overall is fairly
It's gotten
decent
better
in
and better over the years.
some
So,
places, but there were still some huge dead areas that we were in where you'd only get a satellite communication out. And then just make sure you got water. Water is number one. Uh, you just don't want to go hiking for an extended length without some
or
hydration.
even if you're not hiking far, but you're carrying in heavy gear, it's just have water with you, stay hydrated, make sure that
Yep.
you're taking care of your body because things can creep up on you. And especially if you get an animal on the ground, like I've had some times where I've killed a deer and I've drank all my water and you're having to drag, if you're taking the whole carcass, for example, and you're dragging that deer out of the woods, it's not easy. And there was several times I wish I hadn't drank all my water or I would have had more water just because it was like, man, I need some water right now. This
And like be cognizant of your own health, right? If you're on a medication or if you're a guy that sits at a desk all day, I do. That's majority of my work. Um, know your limits
Mhm.
and don't try to impress anybody. It's not about like trying not to look bad or whatever. Be honest and like know your limits, know what you're capable of. Don't be getting silly because again, you're there to have fun and enjoy it, but also be safe. Safety is number one when you're out there.
Yep.
So
One last thing I wanted to touch on quick before we finish up here. Um, One thing we didn't actually have on our list here, another way to prepare for a hunt. Make sure you're in good shape for your hunt. I mean, it's an important thing. I think it's more fresh in our minds, especially after this past fall with our elk hunt in Montana, some of the terrain we encountered, and we were all in fairly good shape. But you know,
I'm not 20 anymore. I'm gonna be 40 this year.
right?
40.
That's crazy, man.
40. Where are you gonna get me a hunting item for my birthday?
I'll have to think about it.
Like a
It,
little,
it has to be appropriate.
like a little hawk whistle or something.
Maybe I'll get you maybe since you're turning 40, you're gonna be an old man soon. Maybe I'll get you a cane that has like a 22 long rifle built into it or something.
Dude, that's like James Bond level.
Isn't that pretty cool? Call me Q. Um. Anyway,
I gotta go to the Renaissance and get me a Gandalf pipe. I need a. I'm starting. I'm committed. When I turn like I don't know a 70, like maybe 70 is around there. But I have this. If anyone's seen Secondhand Lions, the movie, these two old guys
I haven't seen that movie in forever.
apparently find this like amazing treasure, and this kid gets dropped off, and he's their nephew, and uh they sit on the porch and with their shotguns and rocking chairs and overalls and just kind of shoot at stuff
Is that gonna be
and shoot
us?
at well no from my standpoint I want to live like a this awesome life of filled with love where I love my family and I don't want to turn insane or anything like that but the simple things in life like oh there's a squirrel and I'm like I like canes and stuff I just think I just have this image of myself of having fun and it's not to like impress I just want to have fun so just I want to sit on a porch in a rocking chair and ponder big like questions of life and sit with friends and
Well, Chris, one of the best ways to make sure that you're able to enjoy life into old age is by staying in shape, taking care of your body. So as you,
What are you saying? What are you saying?
I'm talking about I'm circling back, Chris. I'm trying to keep us on topic here.
Guys,
But
I'm 6'5", almost 6'6". I used to be able to dunk pretty effortlessly, like a 360, and I used to run a very quick mile.
things
I'm
change.
40 now though.
Life happens.
Life is short.
Yep.
Wow. You're gonna be here in no time.
Um, I got a little while still. I'm a little bit
No,
younger
you're
than you.
now you're gonna be here in no time. Don't worry, you'll
Okay.
snap your fingers and you'll be here.
Well, anyway, I feel like we've covered a lot of the bases. I mean, there's so many other ways that we can prep, things to do before you take your first hunt. But hopefully, what we've talked about here today is, at least a good start for you. You can kind of do some more deep dives. If you have more questions, want more tips, or have questions about specific things we talked about, or maybe things we didn't talk about, please shoot us an email, message us on Instagram or any of our socials. Go to our website. You can contact us there and there's more information on there. There's blog posts, all sorts of stuff you can learn. Um, anyway, please reach out to us. We're happy to answer questions. And also, if there's anything you want to hear more of on the podcast, let us know. Next week, we are going to be talking about lessons for beginners on the hunt. Not so much the prep side and what we're going to do before the hunt, but what the things that we're going to actually do on the hunt. I think it's going to be super fun. I think Chris is going to have some valuable insight there, and yeah, I think that pretty much covers it for
Cool.
before.
Reminder to subscribe,
Mm-hmm.
comment, like, engage on social media. Help us build this community.
Yeah.
We just love hunting conversation, and sharing personal stories and tips is what we find is just so fun. It continues the conversation. We love meeting people, and
Yep.
I was thinking about this while you were talking. One of my dream hunts is to do like the back timber where I'm knee high water for duck,
Mm-hmm.
and I wonder if some awesome person is gonna say, "Hey, come down to Arkansas," or
That'd be
something.
great.
Like I'm gonna start plugging this every episode. This is gonna be my thing, and you're gonna get annoyed. But
Just give me a call. Give me a call. Yeah,
I'll bring the coffee. Let me know.
this is a community. We want Ready Set Hunt to not just be a podcast that you listen to, but we want this to be a community that you can engage in.
Mm-hmm.
Meet other hunters. Um, engage with us. We're not just a couple of. I mean, we are just a couple of dudes talking about hunting, but at the same time, like, this isn't just about us putting out words into the airwaves, but it's really to try and create a community that can all come together, and we all hopefully love hunting, or you're wanting to learn more about hunting, and that's why we're here. So thanks again for listening. We're super happy, super lucky to have you on board. For those of you listening, share it with your friends.
Catch you later, everyone.